Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Microsoft 365 May. Once again, we start the day with a big shout out to our sponsors and, of course, to the organisers of the conference. Thanks for all your hard work. Thank you for joining us today again for the third session in our series of Coming Out the Other Side, One Size Won't Fit All. I'm Amanda Broomhall, and I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. Over to you, Cairo.
And I am Cairo Walker, the other half of the ABCW partnership. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome from across the ditch, the other part of the bubble, Aotearoa.
Thanks, Cairo. Once again, I'm going to kick off this session with a story. I'm getting quite used to these. My story this week comes from the same consumer brands organisation we mentioned last week. It's a big organisation with a large number of product lines. The various product lines have performed quite differently during this lockdown period. Children's craft materials sold through supermarkets and sold like hotcakes, and sales were great. Outdoor camping equipment absolutely bombed, and the sales were terrible. In between, they had the sorry, I just lost that. Sorry about that. Then they also had candle business, which also initially bombed because they were obviously seen as superfluous expenditure when everyone feared for their jobs. But in the last few weeks, sales have rallied. People obviously desperate to make their homes feel good, having spent so much time there, and they've decided candles would be a good idea. So overall for this company, well-performing products have balanced out the poorer performers. In my discussion with the Australian sales manager, the comment was made that the size and mix of products for their organisation was likely to protect them from a major hit to the bottom line. However, their smaller competitors who do not have the same product mix could well be in big trouble. And I'm telling this story because, again, it reminds us that the new normal will be different for every organisation. Some will have the capacity to ride out the disruption better than others, while others will have to make major adjustments to how their businesses are structured, how they'll recoup costs, and where they'll continue to fit into their market. In the previous two sessions, we've been working through the model for planning the post-lockdown future for our organisations. If you've not tuned into the previous workshops, then I highly recommend you go back and check them out. You can refer to the conference videos or check out the ABCW website and the blog section in particular for the various associated materials. Before we progress, just want to let you know we'll stick around at the end of this session. So I encourage you to add questions, comments or ideas into the chat window, and then we can discuss them at the end. Let us know if you've been following along with the activities, or if you have, what issues you've struck, or if you've got any thoughts or ideas. We'd love to hear them. Also, a big thanks to those of you we've been in touch with during the week. Your feedback's been great, and we look forward to more discussions on how this framework will fit into your organisations. Last week, we began the second step in the framework, which was all about undertaking research on the lockdown period and how it impacted our organisations and our staff. So last week's exercise was an information gathering exercise. Today, we look at the second part of that research activity, which is about making sense of the information that we've collected. Let's remind ourselves why we've been doing this research. In the last couple of months, so much has changed. Every organisation has been disrupted to a greater or lesser extent. The economy has changed, and potentially our positions within our markets. So the purpose of the research has been to explore what has changed both internally and externally. What have been the impacts of those changes? Are they likely to be short-term or long-term impacts? Has everyone else in our sector been impacted to the same degree? And then as a result, what changes are we going to need to make to our organisations so we can continue to operate successfully? So if you have done or plan to do the research information gathering, then it's likely at this point you have a heap of notes, documents, potentially some recording from interviews and workshops, and output from the experience survey. You'll have a heap of information. If you're like me, you'll be excited by some of the stories you've heard about inventive ways of getting work done or where people have pulled together to make things happen. You want to keep those stories both for historical purposes and for illuminating the research findings and presenting to others across the organisation. What about all the other information? How do we make sense of all of this? Well, there are many ways to analyse information, you all know that, but today we're just going to take you through 4 activities that we think will help you with the analysis and the creation of a set of findings. There are 4 tools. The first one is effectively a series of little mini SWOTs based on the research topics we talked about last week. We then explore some larger themes that will be, important in looking at the future of our organisations. Cairo will take you through her high-low matrix, which will help make sense of some of the staff experience survey output. And then we'll just talk about presenting your findings. Now, just to be clear, we don't expect you to be responsible for answering all the questions that arise out of the research work. Your focus, if you're doing this, following this framework, your focus will be to examine the research and make findings that will provide a clear set of discussion points for the rest of your stakeholders across the organisation. It's not all on your shoulders. So let's look at the first activity, which is a series of mini SWOTs. If you used the tools that we provided last week, you'll have gathered a heap of information based on the research topics that we talked about: strategy, external factors, impact on business functions such as sales, customer service, HR, etc. For the first activity, we want you to look at the findings for each of those topic areas. And effectively, we're suggesting basically a mini SWOT for each of those topics. What were the strengths and weaknesses you identified? Where were the opportunities or new ideas? What are the threats and problems that might arise? We've got, you can see in front of you now, a template that we've created that you can follow to actually undertake this. So at the top, you write in your topic and then complete the rest of it. If you have a lot of material, and potentially some of you will, you could probably convert that template into a spreadsheet so you can capture all the information you need. As you go through it as well, capture your ideas, more questions, etc., that will need to be answered as you go through this. So what we're really looking for here, what worked well, what did not, what are the lessons that we can take forward? So that's the first activity. The next activity is about exploring larger themes. This activity takes the output of the previous SWOT activity and uses them to consider some of the bigger overarching themes that we need to look at as we determine the new normal for our individual organisations. Now, we've run this exercise several times, so we're going to kickstart you with a number of themes that you may that may be of use. You may choose to add more themes or change the ones we've provided. That's fine. It's just these are a suggestion for you. The themes that we're looking at today include, we're giving you 8 themes. The first couple are things like financial implications, what's been happening financially, what are the possible solutions where we need to shore up or improve our financial position. Infrastructure is obviously going to be a big one. Think about your physical office space. You've got staff who may be saying, hey, I want to start working from home more regularly. Do you need the same amount of office space? We know we have to change layout in offices for a social distancing perspective. These are some of the big themes, and it'll be great to inform them with our research. Digital experience, obviously, how has that changed in the last couple of months? Where do you need to take that? Then there's another bunch of themes on the next slide, which cover, again, a number of topics that we will explore. Again, we provide you with so there you go. Well, health, wellbeing, core business, sales, customer information, emerging models. That's external things. What's happening externally now. Is your competitor suddenly using drones for delivery? Do you need to be doing that too? What's been the impact on your suppliers and your supply chain? What changes do you need to make there? And finally, what are some of the solutions you will need in terms of redesigning your organisation? Now, this activity will require you to engage a range of stakeholders to review each of the themes that you look at. Again, we've provided a template to help you progress these discussions. And I suggest you'll probably do these in a workshop or brainstorming type session. What I suggest before you start the workshop or the brainstorming session is take the template, which you can see now on the screen, take the template and reviewing your outputs from the SWOT activity, add the relevant findings to each of these themes. So that when you're discussing each theme, you can actually easily refer to the detailed learnings that came from your research. It might be, got something back from the staff survey about, wanting to work from home. So when you're discussing office layout and someone says, well, we don't know what people think, you'll say, well, actually, we do know what people think, or we've actually started asking those questions. And I think that could be a particularly useful tool in terms of encouraging a whole lot of discussion around the big themes. For the next activity, I'm going to pass you over to Cairo. Cairo. Hopefully you're still there. Cairo, you're on mute.
I am, yes, apologies. So with all of these worksheets that we've provided, there's different ways that you can use these. So you can print them out. We'll provide them to you as a PowerPoint file. So you can create electronic versions if you want to. Obviously, that's easy to share. But sometimes it's really nice to print these out large, A3 size, and put them up, create like a room, put them up, have people participate, get involved, whether it's virtually or in real life, depending on where you're up to. There's lots of different ways that you can use these to brainstorm and to pull kind of all the ideas together. So with the survey, a lot of the survey tools come with built-in analytics, and they export graphical information and that kind of thing. But what we've done based on the survey questions that we gave you last week is we've created this matrix. So as with everything on here, change the colors, change the tags. It's there as a starting point, as a guide for you. But we've broken these up into various areas. So connection to clients, network connectivity, change to income. So this can be used in a number of different ways, and I've put a little one together for ABCW so you can see what it might look like. Really what you're looking to do with this is probably do it in teams, get teams to do it, or do it depending on how big your survey results are, do it across the survey results. And you'll just move these little tags around according to the degree of change that people experienced and how difficult that change was for people to deal with. One way that you could look at this is you could take those three types of working practices through lockdown, which are fully working from home, remained in the workforce, or continued in the community. Whatever you put into the survey, you could take those and do one of these for each. So what this gives you is it gives you the people who went through a high degree of change and who coped with it particularly well. And it also gives you those people who went through a high degree of change and perhaps it wasn't quite so easy for them. So what you can do with that then is learn from the people who, for whatever reason, went through a high change and found it quite easy. And then you can understand who needs to be supported, what areas of the business need to be supported, and how. And you can formulate the tips, tools, training, support plans, whatever needs to happen to support those people. So here's a little one. So I've got 2 dots for each color. This is a little one for ABCW. And obviously it's easy. We're an organization of 2, but it shows you how this will work. So both of us through lockdown, our spouses worked at home for different reasons. So that was a big change to us, but we found that pretty easy to deal with. It didn't really have that much of an impact on us. Right down in the low area, all of our social stuff, working together, getting things done, desk ergonomics, everything else, it was same old for us. None of that changed. But what did change is our business changed through this. So you can see up in the top right-hand corner, our pipeline, I wouldn't say evaporated, but it definitely downsized considerably in terms of future business. There was issues around business continuity, and we had to figure out new ways to have relationships with clients where we had done a lot of face-to-face interacting and things like that. So if I'm looking at this, what it tells me is that the focus here is all on business development, marketing, and figuring out how to deal with clients in this kind of, in our new normal. So that's where we will focus. Things like, I live in the Hunter Valley, things like the Wi-Fi speed. I use satellite for all of the Wi-Fi here. And even though that was really difficult to deal with, there's nothing I can do about that. I've got the best that I can get in this area. And then just another quick one. So this is Stella. Amanda and I do have quite a convivial relationship with James, and you might have seen him present a couple of sessions earlier on, which were fantastic. So James here, you wouldn't really expect for James's fully work from home dot to be up there like that. So it's a low change because James always works from home. This is part of his normal business as usual consulting model, and yet the change was difficult for James. So he's right up that end. But when you dig into it a little bit deeper, you understand that now James is working from home with 4 teenagers, and his wife's working from home as well. And he has a daughter at university. So suddenly desks and privacy and all those good things that we need for meetings and all those things became difficult for James. So it's about drilling. It's about having a guiding point, a starting point for where to go and have these conversations. It's not about taking these things as this is 100%, you know, where the dot falls is how it is. It's about drilling in and understanding. So just step by step, just define what the frame is, identify at both ends of the scale how people performed, understand and drill into those areas where people did well and perhaps not so well, and then focus on the transformation, so honing the tips, training and support moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Cairo. Then the final activity out of all this research analysis is presenting your findings. If you follow the framework up to this point, then you will be in a privileged position to have a wide view of what's happening right now in your organisation. So now it's time to share that knowledge with the rest of your people. Share it widely and particularly with your senior stakeholders. You'll need to take people on the journey that you've been on, especially for the people you want to be involving in the next step of the framework, which is the planning activities. You're going to get people involved in doing the planning and making decisions. They're going to need the background that you have in order to make those decisions. So for next week, and while I tell you about next week, I think the competition slide will soon pop up as it comes down the pipeline from the Hunter Valley. Next week, same time slot, we'll be looking at the 3rd step of our framework, and this is where we start to turn our findings from our research into actions. So out of this week's analytical activities, there'll be a plethora, no doubt, of action points, ideas and questions to be answered, decisions to be made. Step 3 is about addressing all of that and making some decisions on the way forward and prioritising it. So stay tuned for that one. So thank you for listening. I'm just wondering, and maybe Megan, you can tell me if anyone's had a question at this point or a comment they'd like to make, or if anyone has a question now, if they want to type it into the window, we can discuss it.
We haven't got any yet, Amanda. I did do a quick reminder before. So people,
Okay.
if anyone has questions, feel free to we'll hang around for a little bit to give you time to pop any questions in now.
Okay, and while you do that, I'll just sort of do a wrap. But if you're daunted by the thought of applying this framework to your organisation, then don't fear too much. There are other options. Obviously, you can review the videos of the framework from the Microsoft 365 May sessions. You can obviously engage ABCW to come into your organisation to assist you with the process. Also, we're putting together an ebook about this that we'll be making available to use as a reference. So if you're interested in that, please get in touch. As well, we're scouting for stories and experiences from your organisation. So again, get in touch because we'd love to include them in our book.
If I can just add also, please keep in mind questions are private. If you're unsure about posting, they come to the speakers only and we don't need to publish them.
Yeah. If you're being shy, that's fine. You're welcome to contact Cairo or I through LinkedIn, through our various contact details when you get a chance. Happy to talk anything through. And I think maybe at that point then we'll wrap it up. And so thanks for attending, and we'll see you next time next week. Thanks very much.